Right. Hi all. Good morning for joining me. We'll wait in for some time for people to join in, another 5 minutes or so, and we'll probably start on from there. Guys, you could not hear because the meeting is still not started. So let's wait on for another some few minutes and we'll start in. Okay. Hi all. I've also given you guys permission to unmute yourself. Okay. So basically, thank you so much for joining me on a Sunday. I understand that all of you would have your all errands to run, but still you took out time and you are here with me. So thank you very much for joining me for this workshop. So primarily this workshop that I have put in is a second workshop, which has come up basically by by demand, or people have really requested me. So that's where I've put up this as a second workshop. Now, intention of putting this workshop on salary benchmarking is more from a technical point of view. So you may get a lot of information on net over how to do it, or what is required to do a benchmarking. But when you actually want to put into a practical use, it becomes a little difficult. Or if you don't have your concepts clear, it becomes difficult how to apply those logics which are being mentioned or which are being spoken about in a lot of content. So that's where, when I was talking to my mentees over a few people, where I've picked up individual assignments with SMEs and with few HR professionals. This is one of the question which came on coming to me now and then, that I have data, but how do I benchmark? What is it that's needed to benchmark? Or why? What is the need for me to benchmark? And again, every every now and then, if you need to do a parity, of course you run to your CNB expert. So that's also one of the challenge what I hear most of the times from business partner or from HR generalists who are basically into a generalist function. So of course when you talk about benchmarking, it is more related to your CNB function, agreed, but it's a myth. If you have your employee data in place and you know how to do it technically, you can also drive, you can also prepare a sheet for yourself, which can be done with the data that's available with you. Okay, so that's my intention when I'm picking up this particular workshop, that a generalist or a business partner who directly deals with the business unit head, and when they demand on getting certain kinds of reports from you, you should be self-sufficient in putting your data together, working out as a in a plan in terms of a systematic way of putting that data, and then how do you present it to them. So this particular workshop is basically, of course, a 1 hour workshop where it's more from a process point of view, that if you have to do a benchmarking, what all ingredients, key ingredients are needed to prepare that entire benchmarking sheet. And a detailed workshop that I pick up for 20 hours is where you would see entire working on this particular workshop. So every step that I talk about or that we talk about, okay, it would be it would be more from a practical approach of how do you gather that particular data and put in a sheet. Okay, so that's how it's going to work like when I talk about a salary benchmarking sheet. A little about me, as you can see in my introduction. I've been into HR for like 17 years now. Past 5 months, I've been into an individual mentorship, a gig HR, by my role. So I work small. I actually work with a smaller set of companies to build the core HR function for them. And I'm also picking up HR mentorship assignments on key HR topics. So not generalist HR topics, but when it comes to core. So in terms of core, this is a core of a business. Why am I paying? What am I paying? Kind of, and related to this, in terms of your career progression or succession planning. So these kind of assignments is what I pick up in terms of mentorship. So this is a little about me. Uh, okay, so I'll walk forward from here, and this is my agenda. So I'm going to pick up why are we doing this? So what is the need? Where does it come from? A more of a storyboard for you to relate that if I have to pick up a benchmarking sheet, okay, what is my key ingredient looking like? So when you have your key ingredients in place, how do you put it in a process? When you put in a process, that particular set of activities, okay, could be a small exercise in itself, or could be a data collation point in itself. So every step that you see would be more of a exercise in itself, and then when you get the end result from that particular sheet is where you pump in that entire data in your salary benchmarking sheet. Okay, so look at this entire process in that way. And once you have your process flow and once you have your ingredients, how do you see your entire sheet coming up like? Okay, so this is my agenda for today. So I am going to unmute you all because there's a calibration exercise which is needed. Okay, so I'll take you to the first slide. Now you guys can unmute yourself. Okay, and we'll have a calibration exercise for 5 minutes, and then we'll walk to our next main exercise. I see a chat coming up. Yes, I would be covering this part, Mohit. Okay. Okay. Uh, okay. How many of you have built or have done a research on buying a house? When you are buying your first house, what do you think you need it? Right now we are building a storyboard, okay? So from that point of view, if you are going to buy a new house, what is it that you look at? What kind of ingredients you want to place it together to build your house?
Budget.
Okay,
Location,
okay,
nearby schools, hospitals, and other facilities like public port.
okay. So all of these can be
Locality.
clubbed into something.
Planning.
Okay,
Planning, designing. Amenity services.
okay,
First,
What
look
is
at
my
the
exact
standards.
what is my exact need?
okay.
First, look at the standard which you are going to admit, whether it is a CBSE or state board.
We are building a house.
Building or buying?
Building, buying, both.
Okay.
Both.
Search.
What material, what kind of design we want, what kind of the facility we want, and what kind of areas, energies. There are plenty of things we can include into this if we are building a house.
Okay. The first step, what is the first step you would do for yourself?
Design or plan.
First, I will
Needs,
need my budget.
need assessment.
Need assessment, yes, but need assessment for what?
Like how square feet how much square feet I need it. Like what is my criteria would be, and how I'd be started up.
My budget and my real need.
Okay. Okay. Good enough. Good enough.
I would say that I would also look at, whether this is an investment for me or this is
Mhm.
where I'm going to actually stay. Because that's the
Perfect.
basic need. Because my needs will immediately change if it's an only investment. And if I'm going to stay there,
Mm-hmm.
my needs will change. So
Mm-hmm.
that is what I
Perfect.
would look at. That the first and foremost is investment versus the stay option.
Perfect.
I would also assess what is the market value of similar thing, at other places. What would be the resale value if I'm going to buy at the right place, or am I getting cheated?
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So all of you have given some or the other answer, bundling up what you feel, that you would take a first step into. So now let's see how it goes in terms of process. Okay. When I have to build a house, okay, my first requirement would be, you know, uh, assessment. Why do I need it? My family is growing, or I am going to have addition in my family, or I don't like that place. It's getting smaller, XYZ reason. So you do an assessment, okay, around it. Once you're done with your assessment, what you need. So what kind of material will I need, to build in? So I want to build a house which is more it would need your interiors, how it would be. So in terms of what materials will I need to put in that particular house, okay, who would be my players? So it could happen that once you have put in, okay, you can always say that, okay, I'm going to pick up some stuff from my internal house, and then I'm going to move out. Guys, can you mute yourself, or I'll have to do it? Thank you. So what kind of internal stuff would you think that you want to pick it up? Or, whom would you need in terms of helping hand to build your internal structure, your internal players, your external players? So this is more important from coming down to what kind of structure you see. So you want to build a house, that is fine. You have an idea what you need, but you also need certain specialized skills. So you can have a local plumber coming and doing your internal piping lines and everything in the house, but to have a well outside your home, if you want to do that, Of course, you need someone who knows how to build that well, and what kind of storage, water storage system will it require. So those kinds of external players becomes your specialized skills. Now from there, once you have your internal players as to who would do your internal stuff, and how would your external players come into to the playing part of while you're building this, what is a kind of collaboration that's needed between both of them. So you will also need that your internal plumber, okay, whom you have placed and who's looking into your pipelines, also ensures that the pipeline coming from a well is, they both collaborate. Otherwise, how are you going to take care of that need of, getting water into your house? Okay, in similar way, so when you are building, collaborating with your internal, external makes sense, because if you don't have your factors in place in terms of both of them, they won't be able to talk to each other. So a plumber can only talk to a specialized dweller who knows how to do earthing of that particular well. Plumber cannot be talking to a earth mover. No, it's something like that. So when you are collaborating your base, okay, or when you are collaborating with your players, you will have to see what kind of skill sets both of them have in common. Okay, and that's where you start building on your collaboration and seeing, okay, if things are working in fine shape that you want or not. From there, you take a step back and you see, okay, your structure is getting ready. The kind of base that you know that you have put while your assessment, okay, you think that's the kind of house you want to build, the window should look forward, and is it coming out of that structure or not? So you try and see how it is shaping up when you take a step back. Guys, sorry, I have to mute all because there's a background noise which is coming up. If you have something, you can type a chat in your window. Okay. So when you see your structure getting ready, this is where you actually notice where, the way you want to see your house coming up. Is it coming, not coming? Is there any change that's needed? Still, there are internal players, external players. Do they want to talk to each other and do a redesigning if that's needed or not? Okay, so right now you are just looking at an external structure. You've put in your data. At this point of time, until this point of time, your data is getting plotted. Okay, and that's how you see your structure coming up. From there, you get insights. So now, after your structure is ready, you are inside the data, you are playing along. So when you have your assessment, okay, and when in your initial assessment, you could have thought that, no, I don't want a kitchen which is just a single platform. I want something like an island, okay, coming up. So when you are doing your need assessment and when you are designing that entire place, is how you see that, okay, what my data that I had in mind, is it coming up right now or not? Is there a change in terms of assessing, reassessing? How does it look like? Okay. So that's where you now start playing along with that data. So when I say playing along with that data, it means that any change that's needed, okay, you need to work it out either with your internal, external players and understand if the data is not coming up right. So right now you are working on that particular data and saying, okay, whatever I have put in together, does it make sense for me or not? Okay, the kind of appearance I want from my assessment, from my need, is it coming out or not? I had ordered a lot of planks, but am I going to use it right now, or is it being used properly, or my planks are just, here and there? So that's where you actually assess everything that you have done until now, right from, your assessment to what kind of ingredients you want to build, you want that will help you to build that house, from your internal, external players. So right now you are at a place where you have a free hand of putting, or you are working on that particular data that you have, or you are trying to put that data at the right place. And once you start putting in, okay, data, because this particular part plays a little major role, because you are assessing or you are playing with the data from every angle at this point of time. So once you are done with this, okay, then finally when you come out is where you see, okay, now your home is ready. So now your structure is ready the way you wanted to plan it out. Okay, so I see this as a foundation for any structure. So for me, even a salary benchmarking, so when I have to correlate this particular portion with a benchmarking, I would put it in a similar way. That why am I doing it in terms of what is my need? Okay, is it because of internal? Is it because of new people who are coming in? Is it because there is a new emerging market which is needed? Or this is because I want to be a great place to work? So I am assessing my need. I'm working in a traditional way, but there is a need assessment which has come in. So I do with that, I get all my data together. I get my internal data together. Okay. External players would be, of course, if you want to go for a paid version of a Mercer or a Watson, makes sense. Otherwise, there's still many external players who shares free report, and you can, of course, build still your logical data with that particular, those free reports that you get. Now, once you're done with this, of course, you put all of these in your sheet. You see how your structure of a benchmarking sheet is coming up. You play with that data. Now, when you say I would play with that data, it means it would be more of like, how is my increment going to shape up? My yearly budget of increment is just 10%. How do I play along with that entire sheet when I make my salary grid, which is more as a catalyst from a PMS evaluator point of view. So when I say PMS evaluator, it is more from your ratings and your meaning of those ratings coming up. And where do I plot my salary data onto that particular grid? Okay. And once I'm done with it, my sheet is ready. So now I can use my sheet or my benchmarking sheet with this kind of a structure to either give it for a new hire requirement when I'm bringing someone new. At least I could say that, okay, this is my parity and this is how the sheet will look like. If there is a new emerging market or a new skill coming up, this is where I would start and put up my data around it. Or I want to be a great place to work. Okay, what is other companies giving out? Let me see what's outside in the market. And then I plot my data and get my sheet done. So now accordingly, the philosophy that I have or I've built for my company's philosophy, the assessment or these foundation or these pointers would help you put that data into that particular compensation philosophy. Okay. Okay, with this, I move to the process part of benchmarking. Okay. Now, coming back to the same part, if I have to correlate, what is my need? So I am doing this particular exercise to maintain parity for sure with my newcomers or within the company who's already there. A new hire completely, so it can be from a recruitment point of view. If I have to bring in a lateral hire or a campus hire, and from a competitive pay practice. So once I have my people in place, okay, of course grievances and on the flip side, what others are giving outside in the market, keeping my line of business as a center point. I also need to see how's market shaping up. So I cannot be giving a 5 rupees where already the market is paying 10 rupees to that particular skill set. Okay. Now giving a 20 rupees to that particular skill set is an overhype, which we see when people start negotiating on the offers. But that again is going to be like a boomerang on us when we see or when we have to maintain our parity. So from that point of view, when you are doing your competitive pay practice, aligning your internal benchmarking and your external benchmarking, a midpoint or a median point is a must. You will pay for a particular job role, you will pay only this much. Okay. Supposingly, if I have to correlate with the house, my current house today is at say 20 lakhs. Okay. Either if I'm going to build a new house in a new locality, what is my new budget looking like? From 20 going to 70 is a big hike unless you have that kind of money and you are in a growth mode. Fair enough. But if you have your budgets or if you have your limited budgets in place, okay, you will always see that, okay, you have a 20 lakhs home, you could go until 35, 40, keeping aside all your financial constraints and everything. Okay. So that's how the same approach you also apply when you're doing your need assessment, that I am paying an X amount today, at a certain level I could go. Okay. So that's where your competitive pay practice would come into picture, or would help you when you are tying your internal benchmarking and your external median point or a percentile point for that particular job role. Okay. Now, once I have done my need assessment, what is the first thing I do? So this is your basic data collection. Okay, your org chart. So how you make your org chart? Could it be a role wise? Could it be a function wise? Could it be a matrix? How do you want to do it? So the way you have your authorities divided, or where you see your hierarchy divided, will also affect your internal benchmarking. So when I see a function wise, a job role in a particular function, okay, it is easy for me to say, okay, a software engineer 2 to 4 years in an engineering department is getting 5 lakhs. But when I have to compare the same software engineer within R&D department or within development department, it would make a difference. So your org structure would also tell you what kind of structure you want to put in, so that, when you are doing your internal parity, how you want to see that entire structure coming up, and vis-a-vis how you want to see what is the median of that particular role in that particular structure. Okay. Now, once you are done designing with your structure, the second part is your job description. So job description, again, is important even from a legal point of view. If you have heard of Equal Remuneration Act, we talk about a job description. Okay, we talk about job specification. And why do we talk that? Because the law says that there cannot be a bias in terms of your remuneration between a male and a female. Okay. Now coming back to that, when you put down your job role, okay, and when you put down what's needed in terms of your key specifications for that particular role, what is a pay that you want to attach with that particular role is a must. Because tomorrow when you get certain kind of notices from the labor ministry, okay, you could always justify saying that, fine, as a job role, I have my pay remuneration for a developer as 5 lakhs, but the person whom am I paying 6 lakhs has an additional skill of working on Python, which could be needed for my role forward. So that is where, when you align your job description to a specific role and a remuneration, it makes sense that you're going also legally, which is a need. Okay. Now, once you're done with that, you start developing on your employee data. So when I talk about employee data, it means that either you go role wise or you go function wise. So when you go function wise, okay, you have your family, you have your sub family, you have your grade, you have your level, all of it coming into picture. So when you keep all of that data together, okay, you would see how are you coming up with your grades. Grades could be your IC, your managerial, new entry, intermediate kind of. And when you come down to your levels, it could be your level 1, level 2, level 3 kind of a thing. Okay. So when you have all of these together, it also makes sense for you to see how is your entire people pyramid coming up like. Okay. So when I say employee data, it's not purely putting down their name, employee's ID, what designation do they have, job description. It's more about, going forward and dissecting a particular role into which function they are. How is their sub-family looking like? How is their grade coming up? How is their level coming up? Because all of these data is useful further. Okay, and when you see this data shaping up, say in terms of when you have to map a role or when you have to put a median, you need all of this data coming up. Okay, job evaluation exercise. So this job evaluation exercise is a full exercise in itself, where you have certain job titles, okay, in your organization, and how do you shape them up. So you could do in a way of a ranking, and then you could put a remuneration attached to it, or you can do a factor method or a point method. But generic, a CNB practice corely talks about a ranking method, which is common. So when I say ranking method, what I mean by ranking method is your top, so your apex. Okay, if you talk about an apex, a CEO or a head of an organization, from there, how do you derive or come down to a least or a last level of your job title is where I'm talking about your ranking methods. It could start from your trainee, from your engineer, software engineer, senior software lead, manager, director, VP, and your CEO. So that's a ranking method. So now when you have your job roles in place, I'm talking about job role, not a title. Okay, so you can have your job role as a software developer, but you can have your titles like your software evangelist, software specialist, software engineer. Okay, so club all of them together, and when you get one role, okay, is a job role I'm talking about. So this exercise, when you do a job evaluation exercise, you are actually doing in a ranking method and coming down to a level where you say how your job roles are looking like in a hierarchy in any organization. So you are simplifying that basically exercise. Okay, so these are all exercises in itself to come down to either a midpoint or come down to certain kind of extraction from that particular data. Now once you're done with this, you start bucketing your data. Okay, now when you have your employee data in place, okay, you start bucketing in a way where you are giving that data a shape in terms of your levels, in terms of your grade, in terms of your role. Okay, so when you do this bucketing, you would see, okay, what is, how many people in a certain level I have in this organization. Okay, what is the kind of grades do I have for a particular job role which is available? How do I map it? So basically you are bringing your job title. Okay, a software evangelist is getting mapped to a developer. So what I mean by this is you have your employee data done, you come down to level, grade, role, okay, job role, and then you say, okay, a software developer that I have a remuneration of 5 lakhs, okay, as my job role remuneration. But when I look at a base salary of that particular job title, it is 6 lakhs. So I'm anyways high. Okay, so that is one median point you are trying to analyze for yourself, saying that, okay, when I do a mapping, where does my base salary correlate to a remuneration? Now, everything that we talk about from a salary benchmarking sheet, it's spoken in a base salary. And the reason behind it is your retirals can fluctuate. So they are not a, so when I talk about a base salary, it's basically your guaranteed cash. Okay, that would be paid to you in some or the other way. Okay, so that's where your base salary becomes your base for putting down your entire benchmarking sheet, and then you can play around with that particular data. So once I'm done with my role mapping, I come to my internal pay data. Okay, and I do my internal benchmarking. So again, this is one of the exercise. So now that you have your data in place, it could happen that your software developer is split across different functions. So how do you come down to a median level for them? So when you have to benchmark a role, a software developer, it could happen that a R&D department has a median for a software developer as a role 8 lakhs. It could happen that an engineering department has a median for that particular data as 4 lakhs. So this is where you're trying to understand an internal benchmarking, that if I have to move one person from engineering department to an R&D department, I will have to ensure that there is a gap or a deviation of 4 lakhs salary for that particular person. How do I bridge it? So that's a kind of a proposal that you should be giving to your business unit head when you're moving a one person to from one particular uh, department to another department, saying, okay, this is how your salary parity looks like for a particular role. You are getting this new person. This is my proposal. So that's where you come into picture as a business partner or as a generalist, and saying that, okay, if we maintain parity right now, okay, while your merit increment, we will not see too much of a deviation for this particular person. Okay, so these kind of steps you take when you're doing your internal benchmarking data. Now, external pay data is coming directly from outside. So if you have something, if you have good funds and if you want to do it for a specialized skill or a niche role, you can of course speak to Mercer or with Watson or with Aon, and of course they can help you do entire exercise. But in case if you don't have funds, okay, and if you still want to go and see how your external pay data works like, there are free reports available. That's one part. Second is you get a lot of information from your free pay sites like your Glassdoor, your pay scale. Okay. But now when you are putting your data from external site, what you need to understand is most of the data that's there on these particular sites are at 50 percentile. Okay. What I mean by 50 percentile is you rank your, say, if you have 10 software engineers, okay, in your organization, rank all of them from 1 to 10 with a low to high in terms of your salary. The midpoint that you see, okay, is basically the median of that particular job role. Okay, so you bring a median point and then you compare your 50th percentile. So that's how your percentile also gets calculated. Okay, so that's how you work on your external pay side. So you get all of them together, okay, and you see that you are defining a median point or a compa ratio. Okay, so until now, your sheet is just getting plotted with the data. Now from here, once I have my data in place, so out here, even what I'm doing is I'm trying to see what internal points I am getting and what external points I've got. So when I get my internal points, that's the median point I have. I am going to work on median salary, not on the average salary. That's the difference. Okay. So when I collaborate my data, which is internal, external, my median is talking to my external median. And that's where, if you go back and see our slide, which I showed on collaborating a base, a plumber should be talking to someone who's dwelling that well. A plumber cannot be talking to an electrician, something like that. Okay, so out here, when you put your data in place in a worksheet, okay, a median point has to talk to a median, which is your percentile or a compa ratio. Okay. Now, once I'm done with all of these, okay, this is my data plotting until now. Now, how do I start playing with my data? Okay, and so now I can use this data either for new hires who are coming up, okay, for your talent attraction. And second, this is also used for your retention and for your merit increment. So now to do that, okay, I need certain base, which will say, okay, for a new hire, my remuneration for a job role of a software developer 2 to 4 years is at 4 lakhs. Okay, but when I have to put it in a grid, okay, how will I correlate? So when I have to put it in a grid, okay, I will take my PMS evaluators as one as an x-axis, and on a y-axis I would put down what do they mean by it. Okay, and then I come up with my salary grid. So hypothetical, if I get to understand that, okay, I am allowed to pay say 10% as an increment budget, okay, or for a certain role, I am supposed to pay a 10% increment as part of my internal benchmarking. I would put the base number in a center and I would work around technical around that particular box. Okay. So of course, when you work on a grid model, you just can't fill up numbers here and there. There is a start point, there is an end point, and there are certain calculations attached to that particular grid model. Okay. And that's how you see that when you have to correlate this particular grid to a merit increment sheet, you know, how a CNB expert would say, if I am at 3 as a rating, okay, which is meeting expectation, I should be getting 10% as minimum of my salary. So 10% could be your minimum base or a budget that you have already put, or you know that you want to give a 10% increment. So you work around that particular model and then you derive your other numbers out of it. So it can be in a fraction of 1.25 from towards your right hand side and 1.75 towards your left. Now, a basis of putting that multiplication is because when you put a lower number, it's because you can give a little higher to people who are low on your median or on your compare ratio. Okay, and when you put a higher number, it's more from a point where you can at least maintain an internal parity of not that person being an outlier completely. Okay, and once you are done with this grid model, you see that you have built up that entire sheet for yourself. So this is how a CNV sheet would come up when you look like when you actually plot all of these data. Okay. Okay. So this is how my process will look like. So when you start doing your entire process, okay, you start with putting your org structure and employee data in place. From there, you dissect further into your job families aligning with your line of business. You do a job evaluation process. And then you split that entire job description into your department level, stream, grade, all of it. So this is your first portion that needs to be completed before you start plotting on your data. Okay. Now, once you're done until your level, stream, grade, you then start plotting your internal median data. So with this first step, you have your base salary coming up. Okay, so from your base salary, then you start plotting your median salary for that particular job role. Once you're done with it, you plot your median salary. Okay, you plot your external salary on this particular point. Okay. Now, once you're done with this, okay, you come down to a grid model, okay, and start plotting your data. So start plotting your uh, ratings or that particular increment number. What is being derived from that particular grid model. You start plotting that particular increment number on the main sheet. Okay, so that will come down to a point which will say either you are paying above or you are paying below. So any deviation that you see, okay, when you are putting data, so say supposingly a software engineer, your base salary is at 5 lakhs, your internal median say is at 6 lakhs, and your external data point that you have got, okay, is at 4 lakhs. Now when you compare all of that and when you have your grid model, okay, and the person is say rated 3, when you give a 10% increment on 5 lakhs of base on that base salary, how do you see whether it's a negative or a positive that's coming to you? So when you see a negative, it means that you will have that the person is below market, and when you see a positive, it means a person is above market. So right now you have started playing with your data here in this particular point. Okay, so when you start playing along with your data, it means that you can check, you can see for yourself how much do you want to give to that person, good, bad, ugly, in terms of your ratings and all of it. So from here you actually start plotting, playing with your data. Okay, and then you talk about your deviations. So if you're giving someone a high or a low, despite the person is either low or high, you actually understand that why have you given that particular deviation. So I'm not sure how many of you have actually worked on a salary benchmarking sheet or a merit increment sheet, but when you put your final ratings or when you put your final ratings correlating with the increment number, you always tend to see who's getting higher in comparison to a compare ratio, internal and external. So when you see both are high or both are low, you are actually giving a deviation reason that, okay, I'm giving this person high because I see a role realignment coming for that person in the next few months, where I see the skill is being upscaled, or I see this person giving low because the person is in a red circle zone. Okay, now what I mean by red circle is many companies have started adopting this practice of red circling, where your experience is high, your salary is high, but your job role is constant. Okay, so for those people, you put it in a red circle and a minimum inflated increment is what you park for them. So that can be a kind of a warning for them that, okay, you are not upscaling or you are not moving to a further level. Either you gear up, or you can work out of the organization, or you can find something else for yourself. So those are the pointers that you give to an individual when you are talking about a red circle. So red circle cannot be just in 1 year, it has to be minimum of 3 years. So until a 3 year a person is not moving to a next job role, okay, you can put that particular person for with the third increment cycle that you do. You can always put that person as a part of the zone, okay, and then you can talk about whether or how much you want to give to that person in terms of increment. So that's where your deviation is coming into picture, and you are talking to that person about your deviations, or through the sheet you are highlighting those deviations. Okay, now with this what happens is you are proposing a benchmarking salary. So here, lastly, when you look at this entire sheet, the entire sheet comes up from a CNB expert, wherein he has done all of these exercises, and then he would say, okay, for this particular job role my remuneration is 5 lakhs, but I would want to give this person 15% experience because of these parameters. So internal benchmarking, external benchmarking, my justification, reason. Okay, so all of it together is where I am proposing a benchmark salary for that particular person. So it can be high, it can be low, which is fair enough. Now again, the business units will have a call on whether they want to give or not. So you're just benchmarking your salary, you're just giving a proposal at this point of time. Okay, so once you put entire data, and when you benchmark, at least a viewer, or the custodian of that particular sheet who's going to use that sheet, get to understand that, can I give this certain increment, or how do I look at a person who's moving from one department to another department? How do I go about it? Or if I have to look at a new emerging market, what kind of hikes should I give in? Or vis-a-vis my company business of, say, employee strength with 100 people, how is the other companies outside the market giving those increments? So with this, you actually get all those 4 or 5 scenarios in front of a person, and then you talk about it. Okay, so that they can take a justified view or approach to either say yes to a recommendation or no to a recommendation. And with this, your salary parity sheet is in place. So all of these that you see here, okay, are either exercises that you have to do, or they are either a connecting point. You can't walk separately with any of them when you're building your sheet, because all of them is required. Okay, so as I said, there are, what is my data that I will need to back up my process? So I will need my org structure to be built. I will need my employee data to be built until a level, grade, and all of it, and a thorough exercise for my JD evaluation, job analysis. Okay. Now, once I have done my first step, what do I do with my second step? So then I try defining my similar roles versus a role title or a role definition. So I come up with a job detailing kind of an exercise where I say my job role is software developer. Okay, and how will it look like when I have to relate it to a job title of software specialist? So you are defining, so you're doing that exercise of putting all your job roles in one category, or you are defining certain uh, uh, aspects in terms of that requirement of that particular job role. Okay, then you do a level with a definition. So basically you are defining your levels. So what kind of levels do you want in your company? Is it an entry level? Is it an expert level? Is it a managerial level? Is it an executive level? What kind of levels do you want to see? Then you define your grades. So it could happen that you have so many job titles. So when you start working on your first org structure, or when you see your org structure, you should also see that you don't have too many job titles in place, because that of course creates a lot of confusion for people who want to move from one title to another. So you can club them and say, okay, for a senior software engineer, if I have to put in say an experience range of 3 to 7 years, I will divide it into grade 1 and grade 2. Okay, so you can always do that, so that your job titles get shrink down and your org structure becomes little lean. Otherwise, it would be too big structure to manage. Exercise of mapping grade to title. So this again correlates to the first point. So my job title is software evangelist, but what's my grade? Am I doing it at a first grade? Am I doing it at a second grade? How am I doing it? So you do this exercise to understand that where your job title stands in terms of grading structure. Okay, once you're done with this, again, the 4 exercise in terms of how your internal benchmarking would look like. So you have your base data in place. Okay, now when you have your base data in place, you start seeing against the job role, how is every remuneration or a median salary coming up. So you have your engineering data, you have your engineering department, you have your R&D department, you have your development department, and under those departments, if you have a software developer with 2 to 4 years experience, how do they look like? Okay, is what you can get from your internal benchmarking data. External benchmarking data, as I said, either you have these free reports that you get on site, or you have your Mercer, Watson, these kind of people also give you external data. So no, those data are basically your data points, only your data points. You can only plot in against a particular job role. They wouldn't say that, you can a 2 to 4 years experience would get this. You don't get a free report, which is a detailed report. Okay. External of pay sites are, again, it would be more of, coming from your Naukri, Monster, Pay Scale, Glassdoor. So all of data that you get, okay, try and put a median range to it when you are doing this exercise, because a median will only talk to a percentile. An average cannot talk to a percentile. Okay, so those points you'll have to remember when you're plotting your data. Free reports, or authorized government sites. So when you talk about uh, foreign countries, you have certain sites which says that, okay, you are supposed to give this much for a particular role, at least a basic minimum wage. But with India, it is only with the central government officers that you have your pay commission report, and that's not available, and that's only for that particular segment. You don't have this kind of free pay report from a government site for the roles that you have within IT organizations. So that's of course a glitch, but nevertheless, the kind of structure even a central government uses is worth taking a look at, because when I take my third step, I also take a pay commissioning report and I make them understand as to how do they grow level wise. So for your so even if you have to relate the same example when you're doing it in terms of levels, okay, you can always see that a level 1 should get at least this much, a certain level, and then how do you walk up onto that level. So it's more of a catalyst report which you can use. Step 4 is how to prepare a compa ratio. So compa ratio, again, as we know that mostly it comes from your external sites. But if you have a good observation for a particular role, so when I say observation numbers, it means a software developer with say at least 10 people with the same kind of a job role, okay, or same kind of a title. I can do an internal compa ratio also. Okay. Uh, I also prepare a salary grid and map it to a PMS evaluator. So once you are done with your compa ratio, that's again one exercise you are doing. You come down to your salary grid and the budget that you have. Okay, try plotting it in between a number, and then work around a technical way of how you want to give it to your a 2 rater, a 4 rater, or a 5 rater. Okay, horizontal and vertical both ways. So this will talk about your salary grid. So basically what you're doing is you're not making PMS as your structure or your core. Okay, you are taking it as a point of evaluation. So once you're done with this, you're correlating that grid with a compa ratio. Okay. Now, once you're done with your correlation part, you come down and measure your deviation. So against a median salary, okay, you can always see that how is your uh, uh, median, or how is your deviations getting plotted from your internal and external benchmarking. Okay, so these are the data backups which you will need to plot in that particular sheet. So every step that you see is an exercise in itself. Okay. So you can't just walk around with org structure and come down to prepare a salary grid until you have all of these steps in place, or if you have, certain key things that's required to prepare a salary grid. You will you just can't prepare a salary grid as one single fruit, or one single entity. Okay. This is what you have in terms of your uh, data backup which is required. Now, how do you plot your data? So basically, the entire exercise that you see, you start building on your org structure. Okay, so this is more from a role point of view. Okay, you start plotting your main elements in terms of your job evaluation. So you write your description, your specification, then you come down to your pay structuring, and then you get it approved. So when you write a job description, which is an HR's uh, key responsibility, you also have a committee who would approve your job evaluation or that particular description. Okay, of what do they need, because once they approve is where you can park your remuneration against that particular job role. So this exercise is equally important when you're doing so. You could get a lot of request, or say from your manager say that, okay, I'm looking for a DevOps engineer 2 to 4 years, please go and find. The first thing ideally you should go and see is, okay, if you have something internally, share a job description with them and say, okay, this is remuneration. Now if you need any change, let me know, and we can work on it. Or if you need any key skills, let me find out something from the market of that particular job role and try and refit or redo your job description for the role that you are demanding. And once you're done with that, then you take an approval and you walk forward. So now once you're done with this, okay, you actually get into this kind of a structure where you are plotting your data, okay, your job title against this particular structure in a detailed manner. Now all of these try and visualize this is coming on a worksheet for you. Okay, you are doing it in a worksheet. Okay. Now, once the plotting, you actually come down to benchmarking. So you have your internal and external, and you put your medians plots to it against a base salary. And then you come down to doing something like this. This is a salary grid. So just an example, okay, I have put my 6% that I want to target at least for a 3 level, or for a 3, or for a person who's meeting expectation at 3. Okay. And if you see here, I have something called as 13%. So this is again my point which I want to go highest in terms of putting budget. So all of these numbers that you see, okay, are coming here with some kind of calculations. They're just not put like that. Okay. So this is how you prepare your salary grid, and you come up with mapping this particular percentage to your salary increment sheet when you're doing your merit increment. Okay. Now this again can be plotted for a talent acquisition also. So when you give your interview feedback form, and if you see something coming up like this for a new hire that you are plotting, you can always take this also as an inference. But it could happen that what kind of percentage you want to give, or an increment percentage you want to give. So normally, when you are looking for a change, you expect 30 to 40%, or say 20 to 30% rise, right? So ideally that's an overall hike that you expect, but not necessary for a particular role that you should be expecting. So when I am hiring a DevOps engineer 2 to 4 years, I know that role is critical. My increment, if I have to put on this particular grid mapping, I would put, say, as 25% as my high and 15% as my low. And then around this is what I would play and giving a certain increment to that particular person. Okay. So this particular grid is made or can be used in 2 ways. One completely for your benchmarking or for your salary increment, and one for talent acquisition. Okay, I am putting it open, I'm opening up the window for questions. So this is how the workshop will look like, a detailed workshop. This is a second workshop that I would be starting on from 1st May, which is of course a 20 hours. So every content that you see here is an exercise in itself. Okay. So every concept sessions. Okay, once you finish your concept session, you have your assignment. You finish concept sessions, you have your assignment. And once you're done with your assignment, a final assignment would be for at least 100 people. So when I give you an assignment, it will be more of like a raw data, and then how do you shape up? Okay. So that would be a final assignment. And with that, I also give you additional 4 hours. So now you can work, or you can take my help in working on a similar benchmarking data for your company. So I'm not saying that you would be sharing your salary data with me. No, nothing. You would be working on the sheet. You get all of these together. Okay. We get onto a Zoom call and I understand how are you plotting your data. And if you have a difficulty, I help you do that entire the data in terms of rework, or in terms of putting or aligning that data. So if you see with this workshop, you are doing a benchmarking sheet at least 3 times. One while you're doing your assignment part by part, one when you do your final assignment, and one you are actually doing that assignment for your company along with my help. So this is how a 20 hours would be spent with you when you take this detailed workshop. Okay. Okay, now I'm leaving it open for questions, and I'll take questions from you all. So now you can unmute yourself, and I'll also look at what chat has come up, and you can ask me questions. Guys, you can unmute yourself and ask me questions. I have unmuted you. You can ask me a question. You can unmute yourself.
Nizari, this is Rahul Saluja.
Hi.
One thing I wanted to check with you, I put it down in the text chat also. See, organizations today want to be unique in the way they identify, have their designations put up. So people tend to, in organizations, have pretty fancy designations.
True.
How does one do role mapping when you have such fancy designation? I see you are smiling, so you must have gone through the same thing yourself.
Very much. Okay, so what do we do is a general exercise for this. So I'll give you a live example that I did with one of my past companies. Okay, so when we were setting up this entire exercise for about 100 employees in that particular vertical, I had about 80 job titles. Okay, so imagine the kind of job titles I had, which were like, either they were redundant or they were like similar names. So what we did first exercise was we picked up the main job titles that we had. Okay, we came down to a very linear kind of a structure. So it could be like your training, your associate engineer, software engineer, lead, manager, director, VP. That's all. Okay, so we put first. So as a first step, we did that. Then we said that, okay, my software engineer role, what does it mean to be? So I defined my role. I put a definition to it. Okay. And then I said, okay, if I have a software evangelist, how will it look like? Okay. If I have a software specialist, how will it look like? So if they're doing a similar roles, I clubbed all those roles and I tagged them to my software developer as a key job role. So you will have to identify that when you're giving fancy titles, but if they're doing a similar work, you combine all of them together, okay, and say, okay, these titles are doing a same job role that's expected from a developer. And that's how also it works when you are doing your salary benchmarking with the external vendor, like a Mercer. So all they will say is get all of your job titles together, which are similar roles, okay, and give us a small brief of descriptions of what they are doing. And then simultaneously, they would also map the same description to the role that that we have given it to them, in terms of saying, okay, this is what your role does when you talk or when you relate to an outside of the world. So you'll have to club all those roles together, be it fancy titles, and get it to a job role. So everything boils down to a job role. Okay, remember that part. So when you start building on your benchmarking sheet, you can't have a different remuneration for a software specialist. You can't have a different remuneration for a software engineer. You can't have a different remuneration for a software developer. You'll have to club all those roles into one job role and then map your salary to it. They answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Any other question? I see there's one question from Pooja which says benchmarking is done on gross salary or basic salary. It's always a base salary. You don't do it on your gross. It's your no. It's okay. It's not your basic salary. It's your gross salary. So your gross salary is basically your base salary. So you work on your base salary data. Okay. There's one question which says, what is to be considered in X and a Y axis? Could you please mention about it? Okay, so when you're doing your salary grid, okay, look at an X axis like your ratings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and your Y axis will be your evaluators. So you talk about meeting expectation, you talk about average, you talk about outstanding. So those would correlate to your rating 1 and your uh, evaluator that you want to plot against that particular data. Okay. I mapped it. Guys, any questions? Guys, you can unmute yourself if you have any questions.
Hi, Nidri. Thank you very much for that detailed information. I wanted to know that I have applicants data uh, from Naukri. So is it useful for us?
Sorry, what kind of data do you have?
Applicants data from job portals.
Applicants data from job portals. Okay,
So
so
in which CTC has mentioned. So is it useful to compare?
To an extent, yes, but if you have a CTC data, that basically becomes difficult. So now ideally what you could do is, if you have a CTC data and if you want to do a comparison from your internal side, okay, so now this data, what I understand, is coming from a external source. Okay, when you put your data as an external source, okay, you get your CTC. Now, when you're putting it to your internal, then you will also have to consider CTC. You can't be considering your base salary.
Okay, okay. And in that, I think the variable component is missed. I mean, they are showing only gross salary. So I don't think so it is reliable.
No, you're talking about what? You're talking about external in terms of
No, actually, I prepared some applicants data in one sheet. Okay, so I can know there are certain CTC they are mentioning, right? But they are not, in CTC they have not captured the variable part. If I'll compare my salary structures to their salary structures, so like we are providing the fixed salary. There is no variable component in our company.
Okay.
So I was thinking that the variable part is not mentioned in their CTC, so it is not reliable data.
No. Don't think that way, Pooja. See, you will have to do an apple to apple comparison. Okay, it could happen that your structure, okay, your salary structure doesn't have variable, which is okay, fair enough. But when you look at your structure, it's a you and if you're getting a structure from outside, okay, which is a CTC structure including of variable, you still have a comparison from a CTC to a CTC point of view.
Okay.
Okay, so that is still comparable. That is still comparable. That, you know, for a software engineer in your company with 2 to 4 years, the CTC can be 6 lakhs.
Yes.
Okay, and a software engineer outside with 2 to 4 years experience, a CTC can be 5 lakhs, which is okay. You can compare the data because you are comparing CTC to CTC.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
so that is still doable. You can do it.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Sudhanshu. I think the point that I just sent out is because Naukri data is self-submitted, right? I think that's where the reliability comes into question, because people often submit higher or lower than what really their salary is. That can happen.
Possibility, yes, possibility, definitely. So if you so normally not everyone who would be giving their data is incorrect, but at least you get a median, at least you get a range that what's coming out. So now when they also look at a data, or when you're extracting that data, it is more of a median that you'll have to consider. So again, it's a catalyst. If you see it's going way above, okay, there can be always a catalyst which says, okay, from Naukri, this is what I got, from Monster, this is what I got, from your Glassdoor pay scale, this is what I got. So not everyone would, you know, hype up their salaries and put it, because eventually when they hype up for a 2 to 4 years experience software engineer is 10 lakhs, they again fall into a bucket where who's going to, you know, hire them. So that's also one point to consider, where, you know, hyped up salaries would only be in say 5 or 10% cases, but that's still ignorable, where other data points can still come down to, you know, your comparison when you are doing a CTC to a CTC comparison, or a base to a base comparison.
Nirjari, one interesting question I have seen. Uh, this question is employee working for 24 years doing the same thing. So how do we talk about the red circle in the such case?
Okay, so say oh, that's a big experience level we're talking about, honestly. Now, one is, uh, why is, I mean, if a person is 24 years experience, how has the career been so far? Okay, so is that person in that in that tenure doing the same job? Okay, is one thing to identify. So who has asked this question? Is that person here with me?
Hi, yeah, it's me, Angela here from
Hi,
Eagle.
oh yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so basically, we are into a mechanical engineering firm, right? And we have design engineers who've been with us for 25 years, 27 years. Like our attrition rate is really low. Touch wood. And also, so basically, for these people, their job scale, like how you spoke about the red circle, right?
Right.
So they have been doing a certain level of job for like all these years. So for
Right.
these people, how do we detect the red circle was my question.
Okay, so now your organization, your there is a so basically your organization is more into typical way of working, which is more from a manufacturing side. So you do this, and you can grow up in the same role for over years and years. So now in that case, I cannot compare a manufacturing kind of a setup, a salary benchmarking setup to an IT setup. So in your case, what you would have to rely is the kind of ratings that they get. So they can be a part of the same job title, they can be part of the same job role, doing same exercise. Okay, but now their ratings would come into picture. So if a
Right.
25 years old guy is say earning 15 lakhs, okay, with the same job role, and if you get someone from outside, of course you'll have to see how you getting it from outside. So that person
Hmm.
cannot be more than the person who's already drawing say like 15 lakhs. You'll always
Right.
have someone who's lower. So here your comparison wouldn't be from a point of, if they're not growing, you put them on a red circle, but your point, your comparison would be for them in terms of how are the ratings, shaping up for you if you have your evaluation process in place.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Usually next comment you can see from the Ritesh is looking for the opportunity of the consulting partner for payroll outsourcing, shared HR services, recruitment services, salary benchmarking, and many more.
Okay. That's basically not a question, but an ask. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm
Sure.
Jaspreet. Firstly, thanks for this particular session. This is really helpful.
Thank
So
you.
the question I have, Nizari, is all about we were into technology earlier. Now we've got into consulting domain. And I'm in the process of benchmarking the basically preparing the designations, the grades, as well as their salaries. So
Okay.
I heard the entire the way you explain, but in this case, how can I match it with the experience level? And because consulting has a different category of salaries, while technology domain has altogether different. So if you could put some light here, it will be really helpful.
Sure. So is this a change of line of business or a scope of business completely?
Yeah, no, we have both now. Earlier, we only had technology, and now we are getting more of
No,
consulting. So we have both.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. So you are coming up with a new vertical line of business altogether, is what I understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So in that case, what you will have to do is the basic structure that you have put in, okay, or you want to put in, should ideally come from your head of vertical.
Okay. Okay.
Now, once you have your structure in place, is where you start getting your job titles. So basically, it could happen that you are just starting off and you don't have anything today. Okay, so try and see in the market what other companies are into a similar line of business and what kind of job titles do they have. So that's one exercise that you can do for yourself. Put up certain job titles, okay, and then get it to your business head and say, okay, this is what I've made as a structure, and do you want any inclusion, exclusion in this? So once you are done with creating your job structure, then you go about putting those job definitions. Okay. Now, when you go about putting a job definition is where then you can connect from your external pay sites or free sites or from your external reports and all of it. Because when you talk about one particular business vertical, job titles are important. Now, who would come up with job title is again like a catch-22 situation. Your business unit can always say, okay, I have this vertical, I want this people, but these set of people can always be fillers in between. I can need a consulting engineer. I can, so those titles can be just fillers for you. But when you have to put it in an org structure, how will it look like? So either you do that as a complete exercise, okay, and tell them that, okay, when I looked at a similar organization, these are the job titles, coming to me. If you want this is my line of way of working in terms of if I have to put a job definition to those titles, this is how it will look like. So first understand what do they want, then you can have your definitions in place, and once you have your definition in place, it becomes easy for you to fetch or to get the catalyst data. Because now that you're doing it completely as a single or a new line of business, you will not have anything internal. You will have to rely
Absolutely.
on
Yeah.
what is there in the market, come up with at least basic structure, and then from there start plotting your data.
Yeah. I got an idea. Thank you. Thanks, Nizari.
Any other question for me? I hope at least with this session, you guys got a basic understanding of how a benchmarking sheet should look like or is working, because, when I talk to a lot of HR people, they actually struggle in putting the sheet together. and they have to always rely on a CNB expert or someone who's into compensation, benchmarking, vertical, and they go to them every time, get this data. I mean, if you have your own data, if you know base salaries, you can put it for yourself also. You don't have to actually rely on a CNB expert every time and go to them, because this is one of the additional key ingredient of an HR business partner role, where a business unit would want to understand how is the salary internal from a parity point of view and external coming down when they're looking for new hires or when they're moving people from one department to another department. How does it look like? So this, of course, is a basic understanding that you guys should have. Do I have any further question?
Hi, I have a question. Anumeha here.
Sure, go on.
Yes, I want to ask, when we take external data, what all factors should we consider when we pick external data?
External data for what? From where? There are sources. So you want to go for a free external data which is available on your Glassdoor or on your pay scale.
Yes,
Then
if I get free, obviously I'll start with free first. So if I take free data, then what all factors should I consider when I take data?
So your internal data, okay, as I said, you need to have a job role. So if you're looking for a software engineer, 2 to 4 years is what you can go and look on that particular site. But understand one thing, when you're looking for a software engineer and when you have your base data worksheet that you are working on, it can be either a base data or it can be a CTC, because normally what you get on the free reports and all of it are the median or the 50th percentile data. Okay, so you will have to work on your sheet accordingly. So you'll have to work on a median data when you're working on your benchmarking sheet. And then when you try finding these job titles, okay, on these free sites is where you get certain median or a high or a low salary kind of a thing, is where you can start plotting your data from there. So first step for you, if you want to go and check outside, is get your house in place. Get your job roles in place. You can't be looking for a software specialist outside because it can have a different definition, while a software specialist in your organization can be working like a software developer. So get your job roles in place first, and then look out for external titles that you want to look for.
And if I take data from Mercer, the reports, then what all kind of reports should I consider?
So again, if same way, Mercer also works on the same level. So basically, they will also ask you to club all your similar data together. They will give you a job role definition, okay, and then they will start working on that particular data. Okay, similar way. So as I said, if you want to work even for any kind of external data, your job role has to be defined quite well. You should know that, with against 1:many. So if you have multiple job titles who are doing a same job role, define it as one job role and then go about hunting that outside or inside also. Make sense or no? Still confused?
Yes, in kind. What I also was thinking, for example, if I am in Maharashtra and if I'm hiring somebody from outside state, yeah, Bangalore or Calcutta, somewhere from there. So then won't demographic and kind of pay structures there in pan India location that matter?
It would be. So normally what you do is you put a 10% or a 15% increase in your remuneration. So supposingly say your job role for a software engineer 2 to 4 years for Maharashtra that you're, for say Pune, if you're picking it out, an average salary you would see is 5 lakhs, hypothetical, okay? But if you're getting it, say from Bombay, okay, put a 10% caveat in it. Because when you look at those salaries, you would see higher because they are tier 1 cities. So normally when you do a tier wise comparison, you put a 10% or a 15% average, to it. But when you do from a lower uh, cities, you also do a 5% minus to it. Okay, so that's basically you're playing around range. But as I said, one is job role. Okay, bring it down to a remuneration that you want to give it out for that particular role, and then play along with that data if you're doing it in terms of tier wise, or if you're doing it from say other pay sites, both ways.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay,
Hello.
sure, go on.
Yeah, this is Sadiq from Chennai on behalf of CMRC.
Sure.
The question is, in recent days, we have a pandemic like this COVID situation has given a lot of industry in a struggle situation, and many of the industry are not going that appraisals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in such a case, we are also hiring people here, and they are coming with the salary which they got in the 2019 or 2019 period. So they are agreed, and we are taking them inside. And then after joining, they're comparing with the internal people, those who have got their regular increment. So same job, same experience, but these guys having less salary structure because of their old salary.
So,
Because as an organization, we have only policy of going certain percentage.
mm-hmm.
So this is a different situation which recently we all face majorly.
Okay.
So anything suggested corrective actions for this?
What you could do is if you're looking from a retention point of view, okay, so now of course there's a grievance. So what you could do is, one way of handling this is do it as a role realignment. So today, say if there is a grievance which has come in from a software engineer saying that okay, my salary is not as good as what you are giving to a software and to a to a software engineer who's already there. Okay, try looking at a role realignment for them. So grade, so basically in terms of level, so level 1, level 2 kind of a thing. So that way you could manage at least and say that okay, when you go to a level 2, this is how your salaries would look like, because you're in level 1, this is why your salary is low. Okay, so I don't know how is your internal structure, but for any grievance that comes in from a salary benchmarking point of view, from a salary point of view, you always see where does that person stand today. And if I have a scope, say down the line, if that person can be moved to a different role altogether, and I can do a role realignment in between, and once the merit increment strikes up, okay, I can give a deviation hike for that particular person. So the person stays at a next level in terms of realignment, but the salary remains same, and that's where you get a chance of hiking up that salary. So that's one way of doing. Or you could always put up a proposal to your business unit and show it something of that sort, where you talk about the median salary that's there for that particular role. What is the maximum salary, or the group of observations that you have, who are getting a higher salary than the job role salary, and then propose some kind of hike for people who are not, who are below that particular remuneration or that particular median salary. So at least that could, give them a weightage of saying that, okay, I have a proposal which is made. Try and let's try and look if these salaries, or, if there is a midterm increment that can be done, or when you're doing your merit increment yearly, these people should be looked prior. And then you look at people who are already at par, or, who are already outliers from a median salary point of view.
Nijari, on similar lines, how do we handle salaries of people who have stayed for long in the organization? They have grown role-wise, designation-wise, but when you continue for 7 to 10 years or 15 years, obviously with the consistent hikes, even at good ratings, the salaries are not as per the market, right? Because when you do a job hopping from one organization to another, you get a different level of hikes itself. And such people always come to HRBPs stating the grievance that I have given, contributed so much to the organization, and my historic data of appraisal shows that I have done a wonderful job. What do I get in return for being loyal to the organization? So, what do we do, or how do we handle such cases?
Okay, so it's again a catch-22 situation. Now they have got a decent hike, and they've got best as per their ratings is one way of saying them that okay, we are appraising whatever is best. But when you compare them to an outer market, and if they are not getting what they should be, then it is your duty as an HR business partner to propose or to put a salary benchmarking proposal to your business unit head or to your compensation committee and say, okay, for this job role, the person with this experience is sitting at 10 lakhs, but when I see a same skill set outside is getting this. So do you want to consider your hike or your grid or your salary mapping or your correction this time when you give me a salary increment budget? And that's how you can take care of the external parity versus your internal salary. So this is a standard scenario where you have to put your proposal in front of a compensation committee and say, okay, look at the salary difference which is outside. Okay, and then give me a correction budget, and I can work on it. But for you to answer to an individual is all you can say is we have been giving you best what we can, but we will see what kind of corrections we can give you for your merit increment. So that's basically one
All right.
kind.
So
Sorry, go on.
sure. So now we have one annual budget for the increments and all, right? So that we take care with the median and the lower medians and the higher medians. So we adjust within a budget. But this kind of corrections and all, the budget is very different and again limited, which we take retention cases and such cases in consideration. So even if we do a benchmarking assessment, what is in general you would suggest that a business partner can propose? So maybe the deviation is huge over a period of time, but to what extent we can take at one go?
Okay, you can do it something like um, okay, so this is one kind of approach that I had used it in my past company, and it is still working out with them. So what I did was when I got my salary budget, I of course parked 2% completely out of it. If I had say 12% given to me, I only used to share 10% and then make my entire benchmarking according to 10%. So that 2% that I reserve for myself is for these kind of people where I want to put in that extra money for them. Okay. Now again, when you look at your ratings, your 1-2 ratings would always tend to get a very lower or nothing. So you have that budget also to play along. Okay, so you'll have to look at different ways when you are preparing your budget as to how much you want to give to a person from who's actually deserving and the person who's actually stagnant. So now your red circle and your green circle also comes into picture here. So supposingly in the same vertical, if you have person who's actually an outlier, okay, but you could always put that person into your red circle zone and give that person a minimal kind of an increment which would align with your compensation philosophy. So one fine day you cannot go and say, okay, I'm just going to give you 3% because you've got high. I mean, he would always say that's not my fault, you got me at high. Okay, so now when I'm going to get my increment, okay, you can't be saying you'll get 2% or 3% and then you'll work around it. Okay, but if your compensation philosophy talks about these kind of scenarios, is where you can support and say, okay, if you're an outlier, this is a minimum you should expect. So a person also understand that it's not just coming out of haywire or just out of whims and fancies of a business partner and saying that okay, I would just pay you a small hike or a big hike. It's coming out of the philosophy what is being driven at an org level. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Second, you will have to educate your business verticals in saying when if they have any kind of insights to the particular sheet that you're working on. So you will also have to educate them in saying that okay, if you are putting certain increment percentage for that particular person, please see where does that person stand. So if it's in a green circle, we'll try and put in a little more a weightage. If it's a red circle, we'll try and explain it to them that why they've got a low hike or something of that sort. So now again, working around this is, as I said, it's a catch-22 situation. You can't disappoint a person and the person leaves. You'll also make him understand that why the person has got a lower hike, because constraining all of these, factors, and then you are proposing a certain hike or a merit increment to that particular person.
Hi, Nursery.
Oh,
This is
thanks.
Christine. Nursery, this is with, I work for an IT company and I come from the industry, IT industry. Now, industry these days is playing a little weird in the sense, if my, benchmarking, like let's say a weird simple example of a 0 to, I mean, 1.5 years of experience. So I prepare on the basis of, like, looking figures, salary figures of software engineers at Naukri, and I try finding out the median, and I create a structure. But what happens is, as the industry is blooming and the demand is huge, so freshers of like 6 months or 1 year, they go and they get from the outside industry a package of 5 lakhs. A 6 months experienced person gets a package of 5 lakh, and very openly those people say that either give me this or I'm leaving, because if I consider my company structure, I will take 2 years time to reach over there, which I'm already getting. So, and this is the simplest of the example. This is happening at every role within the organization. So what would you suggest, and what is your thinking on this?
Uh, okay, to handle such cases, you can't make everyone happy. You are not an ice cream seller. True. So in that case, whosoever you think is critical, okay, and you want to appraise them, is only where you talk about increment in literally going like an outlier. So either try and align that person's roles and responsibilities to the next level so that it can be justified, or talk to them in a way where you make at least a 1 or 18 months of a retention plan with them. So not necessary, okay, that you give that person a five, I mean, drawing 2.5 lakhs to say 5 lakhs in just like 6 months of time. Tell them that, okay, we have a retention plan. This is certain amount you will get right now. This is certain amount you will get, while your merit increment cycle. So what you're trying to do here is, you are not giving them the full salary, at one point of time, or that increment at one point of time, and they being an outlier, you are at least try and maintaining some kind of parity internal. Okay. Now,
We
now
tried all of that. I mean, then see, the kids, especially IT, are like pretty smart that way. So they are people who will very easily come to you and say, "Ki in hand increase is what I am looking for." So retention bonuses and stuff we try incorporating, but I mean, for that immediate retention, it doesn't work.
true.
Over and above, I mean, for example, like 5 lakhs if you give in hand, and then over and above, if I look for a retention, that's fine with them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I say only the retention, it will not work.
But then this way you are actually dismantling your entire remunerations. So
Yeah,
I
so
mean, so I
that's
mean,
my
today
worry.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah. So you will have to take a stop somewhere and say, okay, I am not giving you this. Please walk out. It's okay. It's absolutely fine to say a no to an irreasonable demand. Trust me. And you would see this in on a higher side, or when you grow further, or with those set of people, because once you say no to this kind of an irreasonable demand, okay, they will also go out and say, okay, the company didn't pay me and I'm going out, which is okay, so that other person also knows that not necessary if I bring in a higher offer, my HR is going to say yes. It can be a yes only if the situation is justified. If you have just one person, say, working in a DevOps team, and that project is critical and that's earning you, or that's a billable resource, okay, you will have to bow down to the demands that the person is keeping right now. Trust me. But if the skill is vanilla and you can manage it with hiring of other resources in your time frame, why not? So not, I mean,
Sure.
say yes
Thank you.
where you think it's reasonable, and say no to where you think it's going to completely mess up with your entire parity. Okay, do we have any other questions, or we can wind up? Okay, great. I hope you guys like the session, and look forward to connecting with you all. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.